G'day and welcome to the Campfire Project. And today I'm here with Gunther Wallendorf, who is the Chief Visionary Officer of the new Nation's Education non-profit organisation. Now, Gunther's goals are to ensure that more than 14 million school children in South Africa get the best possible education, giving every child equal opportunity while uplifting the community around the schools, creating an environment of entrepreneurs to thrive and for struggling people to see their dreams. Fantastic. Welcome to the Campfire Project, Gunther.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Now, that's a massive dream that you have and a really worthwhile one. 14 million school kids, that's impacting on a lot of people. To come up with an idea of doing something like that, there's got to be a story behind it. So tell us a bit about your journey. What got you into this in the first place?
I think I have to, because I think your love for your country comes obviously from being born in the country, because you feel like you belong. And I grew up, I was born in Cape Town and spent the first 10 years of my life in Cape Town until my mother separated from my father because he was very abusive. He was an alcoholic. He used to beat her, and he wasn't. I don't know if it's probably parents think it's love when they hit a child for specific reasons. But my father was a little bit overboard. He would give us hidings for the smallest thing, and so I can't say that I was sorry when my mom got divorced. At 10 years old, I didn't want to live with my father. But my mother put up with it for 13 years. Drunk, abusive and panel beating, serious bodily injuries and stuff. And she had tried to get a divorce before, but my older brother was only a half brother. So he was from another mother. And when she went to the attorneys to start this divorce proceedings, he said to her straight, well, Dudley is not your child and you won't be able to take him. So she made the decision then that she would wait until my older brother left the house. So that was 13 years. The day he left is the day we all left. And so then we moved up to Durban, which is on the east coast of South Africa. And most of my youth and adult life was spent in Durban. So I did my trade there and everything. And after about 25 years in Durban, maybe a bit longer, my kids were getting older and looking at going to university. And we couldn't afford to put 3 boys through university at the same time. So we decided to move to Johannesburg because the coastal cities in South Africa, the salaries are a lot lower than the interior. And Joburg is actually the hub of South Africa. So we moved up here and we were able to put our boys through university without taking any loans or anything like that. The thing was in 1994 in Durban, I was driving around. That was the year that Nelson Mandela came to power and we became a democracy. And while driving around, I was listening to the news one day and they said that Nelson Mandela had made the decision to make primary education free. And my boys were still at school at the time, and I was shocked to hear that because he didn't have to make that statement to win the election. He would have won the election anyway. And I just thought to myself, where will this government get the money to do that? Because I was a parent that was actually struggling to put my own kids through school. And all schools, all government schools, anyway, if you wanted your kid to go to an upmarket government school, you still as a parent had to subsidize their education. There was never enough money or funding from the government in the first place. So even in 1994, when that first happened, I thought, your mind starts working in funny ways. My mind started working, well, so how can I help? What can I do to sort of make a change and stuff, And I came up with a few ideas, but I allowed the people around me to shoot me down. And of course, the mind then forgets it and you move on. And in, it was about 2013, I got up one morning and I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, you've just become bitter instead of better.
Mm.
And that was sad for me because I was always such a happy person, always joking, laughing, smiling. And I could feel that my whole nature had changed. And I realized that it was the traveling to work and back in the morning and afternoons. It was an hour and a half each way in the car. And so obviously you have the radio on and you're listening to news. And it's the continuous bombardment of bad news. Everything's going wrong. The news is never to make people happy. It's to tell people all the bad things that are happening. And so it just makes you angry and bitter. But I also looked in the mirror and I said to myself, well, so what have you done to change the situation in the country? And so the mind starts thinking about these things. And I started thinking about, so if I did want to make change, what would I change? And to me, it had to be, whatever I changed had to have the highest impact possible, because we had already been 20 years into democracy by then. And every year we could see the country sliding further and further backwards, meaning the poverty levels were rising every year, the crime rate was rising every year, and the education system seemed to be sliding backwards every year. And I think everybody can agree, one thing about the countries that have great economies is that they make sure that most of the population are well educated. Mm. It's a sort of you're sort of in a catch-22. If you don't educate the population, how can you have a thriving economy? Mm. And because I actually love my country so much, I decided that that was what I was going to target, the education, because it's really a knock-on effect of poverty and crime anyway. If you're not educating the masses, you are educating them to remain in poverty, which means that the only way they can survive is by turning to crime. Yeah. And although we have a lot of serious crime, I'm not concerned about a person that's hungry stealing something to eat. I think that if I was in the same situation, I'd probably do the same thing. So I then started investigating what had happened with the education system, why it had got so bad that we have a 56% dropout rate at school. So that means before the kids leave school with the highest level of education, which is grade 12 in South Africa, we've lost 56% of them. Mm. And so I went from school to school. I did about 40 schools, asking them the same questions, what their funding was, how much their shortfall was, what the issues were. And I came to the conclusion that there was just not enough money flowing from the government. So I obviously wonder, well, what happens to the money, So I started looking into the tax base, how much money was going to education and stuff. And it actually boils down to the point where South Africa is 60 million people, but we have less than 14 million people employed. Therefore, the tax base is not enough to pay for a good quality education unless it's being subsidized by parents. So the calculation was that we need to come up with an extra 154 billion rand a year. And of course, my mind then started working on the figures, how are we going to come up with this sort of money? Because out of the 40 schools I went to visit, at least 38 of them had no security. They had no libraries. They had no computer classrooms. They had no sports equipment. They had no music instruments. They had no art and culture. So what are we actually trying to teach them? I have no idea, because every kid is not an academic. You're forcing them all into the same funnel. Yeah. And so that, I believe, is a knock-on effect why we have problems when the kids get to university. So while thinking about how we come up with this funding, I was looking at businesses that make a lot of money. And there were three types of businesses that sort of stood out for me. And the first one is a bank. Well, we all know banks don't give anybody anything. The second one was insurance companies. And they don't give anyone anything either. And the third one was the multi-level marketing companies. They know how to turn a lot of money, and they actually give a very high percentage of their profits away to distributors. So when I created the nonprofit, I decided that I didn't want to create another burden on society. In other words, just become another charity, because it would mean every year we would have to look for funding, and we'd have to look for 154 billion rand. So I decided to base the nonprofit on top of a multi-level marketing platform. So by doing this, we help the parents that, although they're poor, they also need to take some responsibility for their children. And some of them may be unemployed, and they may say, well, I haven't got any money anyway, so how can I help? But everyone can help. I mean, that sort of parent could easily do some garden work around the school, or fix desks or chairs or whatever's broken at the school. So there are many ways to help. It's not only about monetary value. But what else we did was to make sure that everybody could get involved. The product that we sell as the multi-level marketing side is the groceries, the same groceries that they would purchase from the supermarket every month. They can now purchase through the New Nation Education. And we put in a minimum purchase so that everybody could be involved. That minimum purchase is about 300 Rand, which is about $30 Australian, I believe. It may even be less now.
Yeah.
But that would equal, I would say, roughly less than 10% of their total monthly food bill. So we're only asking them to spend 10% through the New Nation Education, and we give of that sale 25%, up to 25% will go back through the school, which means that the school, if everybody in the community that has children at the school become a part of it, the school now earns a monthly stream of income, which becomes continuous, because if these parents and community members also want to start earning money, they will introduce friends and family that have children that want to go to that school in a year or two's time, so that by the time those kids get there, everything is running more smoothly. So the idea is to provide the funding to the school, firstly, to put the security they need in place, and then to start with the libraries, computer classrooms, so that we can try and give the kids that are falling out, the 56%, something else to focus on instead of the academics, which they don't want to focus on.
Yeah.
And I believe we're losing a lot of artists and sportsmen purely because they never touch a ball before they leave school anyway, because there's no sport. So it's about getting that side of it right. The idea of the New Nation is not to go and dictate to the education department what they should be teaching the children. However, I do believe that once we fund the school to its max, to what the budget is, then the parents obviously should have a say in what those children get taught, and they can start saying, well, we believe there should be coding and there should be this and other subjects, so they can add other subjects in for the kids, so the kids can come up to technology age, because at the moment, obviously, they're not getting that either. For the parents and community members, we will provide entrepreneurship training, business training, skills development, and coaching and mentorship. And we do not expect them all to want to be multi-level marketers. So the idea is not that they all become distributors for the New Nation Education. The idea is that we get them in a meeting, we discuss business as a concept, how we start a business, the risks of starting a business, what the banking system does. It's not there to make you wealthy. What the government does not do and will not do for you, because they don't do anything for you actually as a person. And once they get the basics, then we start saying, okay, so what sort of business would you like to start for yourself? If you're not interested in a business, maybe you just want to be self-employed. And it doesn't matter which field they want to be in, but the idea is to shift them from the industrial age mindset into the age of technology. In other words, we need to start doing things for ourselves. Stop looking for a job, start doing things for ourselves, become entrepreneurs. And we strongly believe if we hold their hands for 5 years or so, if a person starts a business and they've got the right support around them. So if they need advice from an attorney, we'll put them onto an attorney that'll give them advice, or an accountant. That way we can catch many of them before they will fail.
Yeah.
And if we look at the future, there are no large corporations coming along to employ thousands of people anymore. All large corporations in the future will have AI, which means they'll have a staff of 10, probably at the maximum. So unless we become entrepreneurs and self-employ, there is no employment in the future. And so this is where the main focus for the new nation as part of the education process is to educate the 26 million that are on social grants, the 7.5 million that are unemployed, the 2 million students that can't afford to pay their fees in university, the disabled people in those communities, and the 56% school dropouts, the ones that will never get jobs. So that's in a nutshell what it's really about. At the moment, we're in the phase of trying to raise a bit of funding to roll out our pilot project, which would be one school and one community. And the issue is that we've been trying to raise funding for about 1.5 years now, and we're finding that the companies that would help us are saying, but you've got no proof of concept. So I was saying, well, that's like the chicken and the egg, right? If I don't have the money, I can't get proof of concept. Until I get proof of concept, you won't give me any money. Exactly. So at the moment, at the end of July, we're going to be doing a fundraiser to try and drive some funds so that we can start our pilot project. And I'll let everyone know when that is. Excellent.
I think with education, what we've found is that, well, we create brown boxes. Everybody's got to be the same. They fit into a mold. And the ridiculous thing is that when they went into school as young children, they were all different colours, like the bunny you have behind you. Everyone was a different colour, but then we educated them to become little brown boxes. And then when they left school, we go, oh, now we've got to turn them back into coloured boxes again. Why we didn't leave them as coloured boxes all the way through and know how to talk to them in the way that they need to be spoken to so that they enjoyed school and actually, worked on their strengths. And then would feel happier, come out into the workplace and be more productive. We would have solved a lot of the problems, but we've still got that issue that's going to stay with us for a long time, because the people who were saying, where's your proof of concept? They were all very good little brown boxes. Exactly. And that's the thinking they've still got. We've got to turn them into entrepreneurs to be able to see the value of a program that doesn't fit the little brown box style that they've all been taught. So it becomes a major issue, but you get enough people into that, you get critical mass, and that's when we get major changes. But it's the problem in getting there. I like the idea of, because I've been in a lot of network marketing things in the past. I've never really been overwrapped with their products because everyone's got the best product and everyone's got the greatest research. And if that's the case, it can't be true, because if everyone's got the best, they must all have the same product and the same research. But they don't. So with that, but as far as it goes, the principle, I'm involved in networking groups where the way we build our networks is based on helping a number of people, training them to help a number of people, and training those ones to help more people again. And you have that multiplication effect, and you build a strong, deep network. Same thing I can see with the network marketing approach to the education with products and that people got to buy anyway, buy them from there instead of from the stores, and then be part of the process to bring money back into the schools. So they're controlling where it's going, not the large companies controlling it, going into their coffers and out of the country.
Yes.
So there's
the
a
beauty
lot
of it is actually, if you think about it, so someone might say, well, so how do you see that uplifting the community? Well, what actually happens is because it's multi-level, you've got up to 25% of the money spent in that community every month coming back in, which means it increases every month. Because each one, you know, that's the natural thing about a human is the more you get, the more you spend.
Yeah.
So they might have 300 Rand this month, but next month it might be 312 Rand or 340 Rand. They'll spend the extra. And they might not spend it through the new nation, but they'll spend it with someone else in the community, which means the money is still staying in the community. And that is the thing. And I think what's happened over the years is we've neglected the community. We've gone outside the community. We're always spending our money outside of our community. So this is another lesson to teach people. Listen, you need to be working within your community, because then it doesn't matter what happens in the rest of the world. Your community will still thrive.
That's it. Getting back to that self-sufficiency that we once had back in feudal times, but lost with over the centuries of industrialization and all the rest of it, technology.
Yeah.
So it's changing that way of thinking. What triggered you in the first place to look at this concept? Was it involvement in network marketing and then going, oh, I can see how this can work in education? Is there a pathway around that?
I really think it was, I mean, I'd been involved with network marketing, but as I was saying, when I was thinking about which type of companies could generate the type of funding I needed, that's when I put two and two together, you know. I mean, the reason I got involved is because I could see a great country slipping back into a third world country, because we meant to have first world status, but we're slipping very fast. And, you know, Zimbabwe slipped. And I don't know, if you look at a country like Zimbabwe, 100 years before it could come right, and that's if you have good government every time. And that's sort of impossible in Africa, if you think about it. You know, I don't think there's any country in Africa that's had 100 years of good governance.
We find that across most countries.
Yeah. So the recovery, you know, although it took the guy in charge, we don't even want to mention his name, of Zimbabwe, 35 years to destroy that country, which was one of the best countries in Africa. That was the breadbasket. They used to export at least 95% of their product. Today, they import 110%, which is actually a shame. It's a crying shame that a country could slip that far. You know, and my fear is that South Africa is heading down the same path. And I'm hoping that there's still time to turn that. And I believe the people want it, but it's just about getting to enough and helping them understand that there is another way.
That's it. You know, most people can't see the pathway to something. If you don't educate them, then you're able to control them. If you educate them, then it's more difficult to control them. And I think that's part of the process and why we've got the issues we've got today. But if the governments won't educate, then it's up to us to educate and help ourselves take that self-governance.
You see, and the problem with most people in South Africa, so deeply indoctrinated in the fact that they believe that the government is there to help them. And I understand where the indoctrination comes from, but the thing is, after 27 years, you've got to be asking yourself the question, you know, my kids are grown up, they got terrible education, and the government, when they were small, the government promised free education. Surely you've got to be putting two and two together, you know. So I strongly believe that most of the people are at the point where they will understand and they will follow, you know, and work on themselves. Because, like I say, if you've been punished for 27 years, I'm sure you understand something.
The trouble with it, I see with a lot of people, is that they will, I've been through the same situation. You know, I can't separate myself from the rest of the population. You know, when you're in a certain state and you think that you can't do anything, then you are controllable by others. And some people will think, well, it's always been this way, I can't see it ever changing. And so for them to see that. Well, we've got the old bell curve. You know, there's the first couple of percent are the ones who come up with all the ideas. The first 16% in total are the early adopters. They're the ones that rush out to try things. Then the next half of that 50% of the bell curve, the what is it, 34%, the early adapters, you know, the early majority, they will go out, and then the early majority, they'll go out and, you know, be the first ones to try it because the others have started it. The first 16% really get into it, then the next 34%, they come in mass and then follow through. And then finally we tip over the other side and we've got the next 34%, the laggers, who will, you know, the lagging majority, they will then finally put it in place. And if you look at a business, it's in that early thing where you come up with the new ideas. The first 34% is when you start to sell it, and the longevity comes from the next 34% who finally get onto it. But the last 16%, well, as I say, they'd still be buying dial telephones if they were available. You know, they will never change. They're always looking for reasons why they shouldn't change. So I think we've got to forget about trying to change them because it's a waste of energy. Come back to the majority of people and get to that first 34% at the front. Yes, the 16% are the ones who are out there like yourself who are trying to get things done. But that early majority are the ones that we need to start to try and re-educate, presenting things in a way in which they can understand it, and remove the blindfolds that others have been able to put on them.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
that's an important part.
and I've got the same approach as you. I believe that once I start talking to the people or the community, as you say, that first 16%, that they'll adopt because they'll see the advantages, and they'll get in, and then obviously I hope that the people around them see what's happening and say, well, I'd also like part of that action, you know, and get involved as well. And, you know, it's to help them really understand that they're stuck in poverty. But if they want to break that, they need to make sure their kids are reasonably well educated. Otherwise, the cycle will just continue, you know.
That's it. Yeah, so how do people find you and find out more about what you're putting together?
Well, there's two websites, and the one is really the customer website, which is the www.gwcorp.co.za. And the new site that I've just established for the fundraising campaign is www.new.co.za. So kept them as short and sweet as possible.
Okay, we'll put those links into the notes, but is this a model that you think that other countries could also apply to their education system?
Absolutely, but I strongly believe that the country has to have reasonably good infrastructure. Because if we move out into the rural areas, remember we're selling groceries and it's online. So they might have connectivity with a smartphone wherever they are in a village, and they might want to support their school, but we still need to transport the groceries and stuff to them. And that's fine if the numbers are high enough. You know, if you've got 100 people ordering, then the price comes down for that delivery run, and we can do it. It's not a problem. But if we go into rural Africa, you know, in South Africa, that'll still work. If you go into rural Africa, and I've been to many of the African countries, it's only the major centers that have the infrastructure. So I would say, yes, it can work if we stick to the major centers. And then the kids in the rural areas would have to then come to schools closer, I think, to the centers to get the benefits. But yes, in any country, as long as they're third world, I mean, it's actually the question is the same as saying, will a multi-level marketing company work in any country? Yes, it would, if people adopt. Yeah, you know, but obviously there's a lot of negative impact and stuff that's going around about multi-level marketing companies. But I think what people fail to grasp is that if you take the 10 largest companies in the world, Microsofts, the Coca-Colas, the General Electrics, the 10 largest companies in the world employ 16 million people. The 10 largest multi-level marketing companies have more than double that amount of distributors.
Mm.
So they're looking after more than double the amount of families.
Mm.
And so, it's all in the numbers, but you've got to actually look at the numbers the right way, because there's a lot of people that'll say, oh, but only the top 5% in multi-level marketing earn big bucks. Wow. What is the percentage in normal companies that earn big bucks?
Mm.
Probably also only 5% if you think about it.
Well, that's it.
So there's a lot of people that are naysayers, but I strongly believe that if you took a multi-level marketing company, they certainly give away more of their profit than any other company.
Mm.
And especially with a new Nation Education, because we're not producing a product. We're not trying to say we've got the best product. No. It's the same product you can buy at the shop down the road. But the difference is, by spending the money here, the profits are going through the education system and back into the community.
That's it. And I see that as a major benefit of it, because the reason I was asking about the network marketing, I know that a lot of people have interesting views about network marketing. Some have been bitten in the past and everything, also felt they've been bitten. But it's the concept. It's like, I want to create and train my competition. Why do I want to do that? So that they can then individually go out and train just as many people as I can train on my own, but there's a whole lot of them doing it. That's a multi-level marketing approach in the way in which you grow your business. And most businesses have that structure with somebody at the top and then coming down through the levels and more as you go further down. So the concept is really the same. It's probably, if those that have a problem with it, stop using the word network marketing and talking about it being it is a traditional marketing program, and talking how it's actually owned by the people and not actually owned by the small minority.
Yes. I think what a lot of people also fail to understand is that if you want to know what the biggest con in the world is, it's the bank. And so you've been a part of the biggest con in the world for your whole life. And let's not forget, when banking first started, our great-grandparents didn't want to put their money in the bank either. They were all skeptical about it as well.
That's it. Well, when you think of it, the bank has our money and loans it back to us at an interest rate. So they're making money on our money while we're using our money. It's like, how did we fall for that one?
When you actually look at the figures, it's scary considering what they give you in return for your money, what they take. Because they can lend your money out 9 times, 40 times actually, because they meant to keep a retainer of 10%. So if you invested 100,000, the bank is meant to hold up to 10% of your money. So then in case you come in the next day and say you want your money back, so they can lend out 90% of it. At what interest? That gentleman that they lent the money to goes and spends it. That company comes back, puts that money back in the account, and they lend out 90% again. So if you add it up, and don't forget, it's all your cash. I mean, the only cash that was put in was the cash that you invested. So it's going in and out 40 times at 90%. And they're charging each person up to what, 25% if it's a credit card. And so you can imagine the type of interest they earn a year. And then they still charge you to make deposits and withdrawals. It's really, and so it's the governments and the banks that have monopolized the population for years and taken advantage of the situation. And in South Africa, the scary thing for me is that if I look at what do I think the government's going to do? I think they're going to raise VAT and they're going to raise taxes. Now, if you do that, you end up chasing the rich people out of the country because they're going to go to a country where they pay less taxes.
Yeah.
And if the rich people leave, you create mass unemployment, which is what they've been doing for 27 years. And they still haven't seen that they're doing it wrong.
Yeah. As I said before, we've got brown boxes running the country.
Yeah.
Need to get a few more coloured ones back in place. Oh yeah, well, I should have said earlier, or warned you earlier on. Don't get me started on that one.
Yeah, it's strange because, you know, we all believe that people are put into governments because of their know and their education, right? So this should be the best person for the job, you know, finance minister, and he'll make the right decisions. And then you look at the decisions that these people make and you just shake your head. You know, you can't believe what they're doing.
Yeah.
But it's not only South Africa. I mean, it's every country. I mean, you know, the world is in a sticky spot right at the moment. The markets are collapsing and people don't know what's coming.
Now we seem to have in each country a self-serving people running the place. And the thing they're not serving anymore is the people in the country. And that's why we're going to keep going down the drain. And by the way, I'd like to put a disclaimer on when I talk about the education system. I'm talking about the system. I'm not talking about the teachers. I am yet to meet a teacher who became a teacher for the high pay and the long holidays, because they know they're going to be working through their holidays. And if you divide the amount of hours into the money they make, it's not that great an hourly rate. It may sound like a large amount, but they're putting a hell of a lot of work in to do that. So, but they're just as suffering just as much as our kids, because the system's not looking after them either. And we're wondering why we're losing so many teachers. It's burning them out.
Yes.
If it's burning the teachers out, it's burning the kids out. We're robbing our children of the future that they could have with a system that needs a good overhauling.
Yeah. And the thing is, you know, I think many good teachers have left because, as you said, the system is not supporting them. And it's also the parents that are not educating their kids as far as values and discipline. Because so they've taken the discipline out of schools years ago, you know, no corporal punishment and that sort of thing. But that gives the kid the opportunity to be rude and arrogant. I don't think so. You know, it just eventually a teacher just says, no, I'm not willing to put up with that anymore, you know?
Yeah, well, anybody who's dealt with children know that children, they don't want barriers, but they want boundaries. If they don't have boundaries, they get lost. They don't know what they're doing, and that frustrates them, and we wonder why they misbehave. If we put some proper boundaries in place for them, it would guide them to the future, but we need to be able to recognise what boundaries they should have. And because most of the people who are in charge have risen up with the same rules, where they never had that knowledge themselves. We've got people who haven't been educated, educating people who are not going to get educated, so they can go on and educate more people or not educate more people. So we're creating a problem that's escalating. And it's the system that's causing that problem, because you can't blame somebody for not knowing something if they haven't been taught.
Yep. Exactly.
Only when they've been taught and they go ahead and do something that's completely contrary to it, you can say, hey, you're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
But they might be doing the wrong thing, but they're not deliberately doing the wrong thing because they've never been taught.
Yes. And the parents are the same, you know, they pass things down to their kids, but it's bad indoctrinations, you know, in other words, oh, we live in poverty. Yes. It's just the way it is, you know?
Yeah.
And if you do that, and you can't blame the parent because they haven't been taught. That's exactly what they were taught by their parents and their grandparents. And so it's just a knock-on effect. And so this is where I strongly believe school education falls off the bus, because they should be teaching the right indoctrination. In other words, you have total control of everything that happens to you, you know? And once you start teaching that, the kids will start teaching their parents.
Well, I think a lot of people have thought that when we teach somebody, we're putting stuff into them, but the word educate meant to draw out. So to take out of the person the knowledge that they have in them and help them formulate it to understand what they already know. And the ability to think, not just learn a subject, but how to think about any situation. Then we don't need to teach them subjects. And so a lot of things that we need to change, but
they will come to the solution by themselves if we ask the right questions.
So I think what you're doing is a step in the right direction, because you're getting more people involved to become part of their own future and the decisions that are made and everything else. And I think that's in itself is a change to the education system. And I think we all need to I know I need to keep on reminding myself of that and going, okay, just because somebody says that's the way it's always been, my question should always be why. Be a kid again.
No,
Every time we said, said something to our kids, they always said why, and we'd say
Yes.
because, and they go why, and we
Yes.
finally go back and say, oh, well, because why is a crooked letter or something like that, just to try and shut them up.
Exactly.
But they will keep asking why, like a broken record. And I think we need to start asking ourselves and our governments and everything else, why? Why do we have to keep doing things
Yes.
that way? Why aren't we trying
Exactly.
something different if what we're doing is not working?
Yeah.
We all look up to
Yeah.
Einstein and say he was a very wise man. And one of his comments was doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result is a sign of insanity. But how many of us do that on a daily basis?
We do it, whether we realize it or not. We still do it.
Yeah.
I mean, if I look at my mom, and I know I can point at myself as well. Now, my mom, as I said, she married my father, who was an alcoholic. When she divorced him, the second husband was an alcoholic. The third husband was an alcoholic. It's almost something embedded with us. We just follow the same path until we ask ourselves, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And make a conscious move to change direction.
Yeah. The answers are always inside, because we keep doing what we've always done. There's got to be a belief around that that's all we deserve, and that we need to start questioning.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there saying, okay, you deserve everything that you set out to do. They're up on stage, they're motivators and everything else, and people get the rah-rah and get excited. But the end result is don't really live it, because the person telling them that is not living it themselves either. And so if the answer's within us, we're the ones who have got to start at that point with each of us with ourselves.
Yeah, and we've got to get the person that doesn't understand that to the point where they believe it's possible, because they don't. I mean, you can't go up to someone that's in poverty and say to him, well, it's your own fault. You could be a millionaire if you like. How it's an impossible situation you're talking about. First, you've got to work on the mindset. You first got to help him believe in the small steps that he can do certain things, And I always say to people, we grow up believing,
sorry, go ahead.
We grow up believing that doctors are special people. And I like to say to people, even the poorest people with no education, anyone can become a doctor. If you're given the right amount of time and the books, you can become a doctor too. So stop looking at people and thinking they're something special when you could do exactly the same thing.
That's it. I was going to say, the people who are standing there saying that, you can do anything you want to do, the statement is correct, but the problem is that they're not showing people how to do it. They're telling them that you can do it, but the people don't know the way to do it. And that's where the real educators and the people of greatest value step in, because they then come in and show people how they can do it. Don't tell me what I can do. Show me. Show me how I go about doing that when I have no knowledge about it. Don't just tell me I can do it, because that's just putting me in a worse place, because now I feel like a real failure because I haven't done it. And I was silly enough to believe you when you told me I could do it, but you didn't have the knowledge of how I should do it.
Yeah. And even the good book says that, right? Don't give a man a fish, show him how to fish.
That's
doesn't say give him, it says show him.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the things we hear from people is just them just giving us lip service to try and make themselves look good. And we need to change that. So we need to start questioning and start looking at things in a different way.
Yeah. And that's why, there are a lot of NPOs in South Africa, more than 120,000 actually. And they're doing a lot of good things. I mean, they're doing skills training programs and stuff, but my whole thing about it, we've all been on short courses. And we know we come back, we've taken a lot of notes. What do we do with the book? We put it on the shelf, right? So if I'm not there tomorrow or a week's time saying to you, Alan, so what did you get out of the course we did last week? What did you think of this concept? Have you tried doing it yourself? it doesn't go anywhere. The person puts the book on the shelf, and maybe it's even a course they weren't interested in, but they did it because they needed some points or something, whatever it might be. In South Africa, there's a lot of point systems. And so you're teaching people things that they don't want to know anyway, but
That's
pointless. Bit of a waste of money, actually.
Exactly. Well, knowledge on its own is pretty much useless. But when you have knowledge and you put it into action, that's when it becomes valuable. So it's the doing, not so much just the reading or the talking about it, but the actual getting out and doing something about it, which means that, if we want to see change, we've got to get up and get out there and take some action, which is I commend you for what you're trying to do.
Thank you very much, Alan. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, thanks very much for coming along. Everybody else, I hope you got something out of this and it's at least stimulated your thinking to look at things different. The more we question what we're told, I think is our benefit. To just take things on face value means that somebody else is in control. But when we question things, we're starting to take control ourselves. And I know who I want to have in control of me, not someone else. I want to be in control of where my future goes and everything else. So again, Gunther, thanks very much for coming along and chatting. And to everybody else, we'll see you on the next Campfire project. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.